It is the year 1386. A pig is standing trial in a French courtroom, not metaphorically, not as a symbol. A real pig, dressed in human clothes, represented by a court-appointed lawyer, facing a judge and jury for the crime of murder. The pig had killed a child, and the legal system of medieval Europe had a very specific answer for what to do about that: execute it. This is not an isolated incident. This is one thread in a tapestry so strange, so sprawling, and so revealing that once you pull on it, you cannot stop. Because the most absurd laws in history are not just curiosities. They are windows into fear, into power, into what human societies truly believed about the world and their place in it. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the law that sounds most insane often made perfect, chilling sense to the people who wrote it. This is the story of the most absurd laws in history, and what they tell us about the people who lived under them. To understand why these laws existed, you have to understand something fundamental about how ancient and medieval societies worked. Law was not simply regulation. It was theology. It was cosmology. It was the attempt to impose divine order onto a chaotic world. The Romans, the most sophisticated legal minds of the ancient world, believed that law and nature operated by the same principles. Order was not a preference. It was a sacred duty. Chaos, in any form, was a kind of spiritual emergency. And so when the world behaved in ways that seemed to violate that order, when animals killed, when trees fell on people, when statues were said to bleed, the law had to respond. Not because anyone was being irrational, but because rationality, in their framework, demanded it. The fault lines were always the same: the boundary between the human and the natural world, the boundary between the sacred and the profane, the desperate attempt of fragile societies to control things that cannot be controlled. Strip away 2,000 years and those fault lines look very familiar. Everything that follows was perfectly logical inside its own world. Begin in Athens, 5th century BC. The city that gave the Western world democracy, philosophy, and tragedy also gave it one of the most extraordinary legal proceedings ever recorded. A man has been killed by a falling statue. Accidental death, you might think. A tragedy, certainly. But Athens had a law, enforced by a court called the Prytaneon, that required a formal trial for the object responsible. The statue was prosecuted, evidence was heard, a verdict was rendered. The statue was found guilty, and then, with the full weight of Athenian legal procedure behind it, the statue was removed from the city. Exiled, the same punishment given to dangerous citizens. Because allowing a guilty object to remain in Athens was a pollution, a stain on the sacred order of the polis. No one in that courtroom thought this was strange. They were doing exactly what the law required, what justice required. This was not the last time Athens would prosecute an inanimate object. Athenian law held that any object that caused a death, a sword, an axe, a piece of timber, could be brought to trial. The object would be found guilty or innocent. If guilty, it was cast beyond the borders of the city. The world had to be kept clean. The law was the instrument of that cleaning. Meanwhile, across the Mediterranean, Rome was developing its own extraordinary relationship with legal absurdity. Roman law contained a provision, still on the books well into the imperial period, that prohibited women from making contracts worth more than a certain amount without a male guardian's approval. Sensible enough by Roman standards. But the same law also stipulated in meticulous detail the proper legal procedure for suing a river. Not the people who diverted the river itself. If a flood destroyed your crops, Roman law gave you a mechanism to bring formal legal action against the body of water responsible. The river would be summoned, a judgment would be rendered. The river, of course, never appeared in court, but the proceeding went ahead anyway, because the proceeding was what mattered. The law had to acknowledge the injury. The cosmos had to be told that this was wrong. But what happened next, in the medieval period, is the part most people have never heard, and it changes everything about how this story ends. Return to that pig in 1386. His name is not recorded. He was owned by a farmer in Falaise, Normandy. He had attacked and killed a small child. And the response of the French legal system was not to simply destroy the animal. That would have been the practical response. Instead, the pig was arrested, transported to the town jail, held in custody. A lawyer was appointed. A trial was convened. The proceedings lasted days. The pig was found guilty of murder. The sentence was death by public hanging. But here is the detail that stops you cold. Before the execution, the pig was dressed in human clothes, a jacket, trousers, gloves for its trotters, because the law, in its wisdom, had decided that if an animal was to be judged by human law, it would be dressed as a human being for the occasion. This was not unique to France, and it was not unique to pigs. Between the 12th and 18th centuries, hundreds of animals were formally prosecuted across Europe. Horses, dogs, rats, beetles. In 1474, a rooster in Basel was put on trial for the crime of laying an egg, considered a sign of witchcraft, and therefore a capital offense. The rooster was burned at the stake, along with the egg. In 1545, the town of Saint-Julien in France brought a lawsuit against weevils who were destroying their vineyards. A defense attorney was appointed for the weevils. The weevils were offered alternative land as a settlement. The case dragged on for years. When the final judgment was about to be rendered, the crucial pages of the court record were, according to the clerk, eaten by insects. The case had to be abandoned. But it is not only the medieval world that produced legal monuments to human anxiety dressed as reason. The ancient world had its own contributions, no less extraordinary. In Sparta, the city that prided itself on brutal pragmatism, it was illegal to be old. Not metaphorically. The Spartan law held that any man who had grown too old to fight was, by definition, a burden on the state. The mechanisms were social rather than judicial, but the principle was encoded in law. Weakness was a crime. The same society that executed newborns it deemed insufficiently healthy built its entire legal system around the premise that the state owned its citizens, body and soul, from birth to death. This was not considered monstrous. This was Sparta's answer to chaos. In ancient Egypt, the law decreed that killing a cat, even accidentally, was punishable by death. This was not superstition. It was theology. Cats were the earthly vessel of the goddess Bastet. To kill one was to commit sacrilege against the divine order. Greek historians recorded that when a Roman soldier accidentally killed a cat in Alexandria, the enraged Egyptian mob tore him apart. Despite the fact that Rome was the occupying power, and the man's death would provoke a political incident, the cat mattered more. And then there is England, medieval England, which produced among its many contributions to legal history a law that made it illegal to die in the Houses of Parliament. The logic, buried under centuries of procedural evolution, was this: Anyone who died in a royal palace was technically entitled to a state funeral at public expense. Parliament was a royal palace. Therefore, to prevent the treasury from being bankrupted by an endless stream of state funerals, dying there was, on paper, against the law. This law, it is often reported, remained technically on the books well into the modern era. The dead, it seemed, had responsibilities to the living. And then the moment that sealed the verdict on all of this, the moment that makes everything make sense. In 1836, the city of New York passed a law making it illegal to drive a flock of sheep down Broadway at a speed of more than 1 mile per hour. Not a medieval law, not an ancient law. A law passed by people who owned newspapers, who had read Voltaire, who were building a modern republic on Enlightenment principles, the speed limit for sheep on Broadway. Because every society, no matter how sophisticated, no matter how rational its self-image, produces laws that are the perfect mirror of its specific fears, its specific absurdities, its specific blind spots. The Athenians exiled statues because they believed in sacred pollution. The medieval French put pigs on trial because they believed that justice had to be cosmically visible, not just practically effective. The New Yorkers set a sheep speed limit because their city was changing faster than they could manage, and someone, somewhere, had been injured by a stampede. Every absurd law is a window, and the window always shows the same thing. These laws did not survive because the people who wrote them were foolish. They survived because the people who wrote them were afraid of disorder, of divine punishment, of the chaos that lives just beneath the surface of every organized society. And they responded to that fear the way humans always respond to fear. They made rules, they held trials, they appointed lawyers for weevils and dressed pigs in human clothing and exiled guilty statues beyond the city walls. Because if the law could reach it, maybe it could be controlled. Maybe the world could be made orderly after all. That impulse, the desperate human need to legislate against chaos, has never left us. It simply changes costume with every century. The pig in the dock and the sheep on Broadway are separated by 400 years and a civilizational revolution. But they share the same DNA, the belief that the law, applied with sufficient seriousness, can hold the world together. Empires rise on that belief, and sometimes they fall when the laws stop making sense, even to the people enforcing them.